Halito, and welcome to Native Chalk Talk, a podcast by natives for all. Here we're keeping our native ancestors' stories and history alive while also sharing with you our native cultures, traditions, and more. I'm Rachel Youngman, a Choctaw originally from Anadarko, Oklahoma. I hope you'll enjoy this journey with me as we learn from our Native American guests. And stay tuned for the end of each episode where we'll talk about some great ways to support Native causes and or Native-owned businesses. Let's get started. But first, a word from our sponsor.
The Choctaw Nation has always provided a foundation upon which a future can be built. From our home in southeast Oklahoma to a bingo hall that grew to be one of the largest casinos in the world. Today's summer school programs lay the groundwork for a love of learning. Small business programs support local economies. And with over 10,000 jobs created, Choctaw offers financial stability to tribal members and our neighbors. Together we build success, because together we're more.
He was raised in a home with no electricity and no running water on his family's Indian allotment land in western Oklahoma, out where that bright red dirt could both stain your clothes and in some way stirs that Okie pride. Perhaps you'd assume he may not have the opportunity to leave the family farm and head off to college someday, but this red dirt Okie will knock your socks off with his knowledge and expertise. My guest today is likely the only remaining Caddo today that can completely build a kuhut kiwat. You'll find out what that is in just a bit. He's a historian, lecturer, Caddo traditional songs and dances lead singer, author, drummer, woodworker, flute maker, and honestly holds about 50 additional points of expertise. Probably the remaining thing he hasn't tackled yet is building a rocket ship, but oh yeah, I left that out. He's also a mechanical engineer with special focus in aerodynamics. What am I doing with my life? So never mind there. He's probably working on that rocket ship as we speak. And may I also point out, he's from my hometown of Anadarko, Oklahoma. Mr. Phil Yakoki for joining us today, and high fives to my fellow Anadarkoan.
Well, it's good to be with you, and I'll say Koahut, which is a Caddo greeting, which in one way means how are you, and another is just saying hello.
So let's go back a bit. I know you live in Anadarko now, but where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico. My family was out there, my mom and dad and several siblings. After my dad got out of the Haskell Institute, he was a football player, and he went to the University of New Mexico where he was a star quarterback.
Wow.
And so after he left the school there, he got employment there with the Indian Health Service. And so there was a number of us that were born out there. And after a few years, our family returned to Oklahoma and settled around our little town of Colony, Oklahoma. And eventually, when I was a youngster, probably about 6 years old, we settled on our allotted land there on Cobb Creek, just southeast of Colony, Oklahoma. So, and we lived there. All of us except a couple of youngsters graduated from the public school of Colony, Oklahoma. And from there went on after got out of high school, went to Southwestern State for a couple of years, and then went to Oklahoma State, where I majored in mechanical engineering and aerodynamics engineering.
Wow. So great. Sounds like you kind of had a great start to your profession there. But you're Caddo, but you primarily grew up around two other tribes. What tribes were those?
Yes, our allotment was abutted the Cheyenne and Arapaho allotment. In fact, the high school we went to, or the public school, was started for Cheyenne and Arapahoes, but since we were next door, like a couple of miles, that's where we went to school. So we mixed with many Cheyenne and Arapahoes, and two of my uncles married Cheyenne ladies, And so we had a great mix with those two tribes. Also, we're just a few miles, 15 miles north of Carnegie, Oklahoma, where there are many Kiowa tribal members, and we had a great, almost constant mingling with those tribes. So I feel like I have just a great basis for Indian culture. In addition to our Caddo culture, in which, of course, we have many kinfolk and attended dances and social events and ceremonies over east of us around Binger, Oklahoma, where our tribal headquarters are located now.
Absolutely. And you mentioned being around all these different tribes and cultures, which is something most people can't say, about the way they grew up or what their community looks like. But I think it's so interesting if you look back to the past, could those tribes have just hung out together back in the day? Some of them could, but some of them could not. Some of them were warring tribes for sure. And isn't it cool to look at today where you look around and especially when I'm home, I can look around and go, Kiowa, Comanche, a little bit of Caddo over there. And it's kind of a neat thing to see these days, isn't it?
True. And over the years, it's all over reservations. Former reservations are next to one another. We have great mingling and intermarrying. I married a Kiowa lady and have Kiowa children. So a lot of families here have multi-tribal backgrounds.
Yeah.
And usually are a member of one tribe, but then just have participated in many other tribes events, and it's kind of a pan-Indian thing out here in a way.
Yeah.
And we all attend each other's events, gourd dances and powwows and ceremonies, most everybody seems to know everybody else, and our kin, after when we mingled, when the allotments occurred in 1901, from then on, the mixing of the tribes and marrying, it's hard to talk to somebody without realizing that they're either kin or very close acquaintances somewhere. and that's good for us, I think.
Right. It's my cousin's cousin. Yeah. I mean, wouldn't our ancestors look down on all that and go, wow, a lot has happened in the last couple of centuries. So I honestly have so many questions for you today. Starting off, would you share about the history of the Caddo, perhaps starting with where the Caddo lived prior to removal?
Our major areas are in a four confluence: southeast Oklahoma, southwest Arkansas, northeast Texas, and northwest Louisiana. There's a map that has been developed by archaeologists and anthropologists that has about a 250,000 square mile area that is identifiable Caddo ancestry according to archaeological things. Of course, later on, as the Europeans came, that area shrunk, but we still maintain the area down on the Red River in Oklahoma and over into Arkansas, down into Louisiana and northeast Texas.
Okay.
So, and that was our when Europeans came, that was our area.
Okay. Yeah. And then everything changed from there, of course.
Yeah, there's a lot of tragic. I don't know how else to put it, but we were almost wiped out by disease, and then later in battles and just being moved and shuffled around here and there. Is lucky that Caddos survived at all. It was a sort of form of genocide that occurred to us.
Absolutely, it was.
Well, other than knowing where we were located, and then descriptions by European explorers, French, Spanish, and English, there were three major groups of us: the Caddo, which is up around the Red River and the bend over into Arkansas; the Hassine, which are located west of Nacogdoches, Texas, around Caddo Mounds; and then the Natchitoches, which were located on the Red River over in Louisiana at now the city of Natchitoches, Louisiana. So that was our grouping up to when the European contact. And so there's good descriptions of us being in those locations. We were strongly affiliated, spoke much of the same language, with a lot of differences too. But we're eventually considered as one group, and eventually merged in historic time.
And then in 1859, there were only about 500 Caddos left. Why was that?
That came about from the diseases that Europeans brought with them.
Oh, yeah.
In which there was just astonishing, dramatic, tragic loss of life of Caddos in our area down around in the four state area there. And then as in the early 1830s, when the Caddos were being strongly being forced into ceding the reservation lands in that area, and were forced to start moving out of our reservation or our former homelands down there. Then Caddo started being just losing wherever they went. They'd be under attack, and over time, just it was impossible to maintain any sort of population just by not being able to flourish in any area, and continually losing our tribal members. And so as we were pushed out of our homelands in 1835, we were forced, in fact, we signed an agreement that in 1835, when we signed that we agreed to remove ourselves from the U.S. boundaries in 1 year. So it just left a lot of Caddo scattering here and there, and mainly over into Northeast Texas. And so just keeping things together, and the long trail from there up until where we were landed over in West Texas, west of Fort Worth and south of Graham, Texas, on a reservation. We just lost many people. You just can't keep going from one place to another and not suffer not just hardship, but loss of life.
Wow, it's hard. So you wrote and produced a documentary called Disinherited: Caddo Indians' Loss of Their Homelands. It was about the removal of Caddos from their ancient homelands to their reservation in Oklahoma. For our listeners, when we say removal, that's when the government was opening up more territory in the U.S. for settlement and removed Indians from their homeland, moving them to Indian Territory, now Oklahoma. Some also know the term the Trail of Tears, representative of the suffering and death many American Indians faced on their way to their new lands. From what I understand, the Caddo were moved from their homelands twice. Is that correct? If so, tell us more about what that entailed.
Well, in a way, twice. We were removed from our homelands in northwest Louisiana, which was about 1 million acres or more to start with. Although as they surveyed it more and more, and they just chipped away a lot of that homeland. So that was the first removal, enforced removal. Of course, we agreed, said, yeah, we're going to remove ourselves, which kind of is a backhanded way of saying that we removed ourselves when really we were forced out. The second was when we were given, or a reservation was set up in West Texas, west of Fort Worth, and us, the Caddos, along with several other tribes, were put on a fairly small reservation there. I think it was only 74 square miles, but a very nice place on the Brazos River. It's called the Brazos Reserve.
Okay.
And we settled out there in the late 1830s and into the 1840s, just because we found there was places out there which seemed a little safer for us. But then we were having so many attacks from Texas soldiers and various militia that there was a gentleman came along and said they need to have a reservation and have some protection. So we were given that Brazos reservation in 1854.
Okay.
But 5 years later, 1859, there was such a cry for getting us out of the country that we were forced then straight up to the Washita River at Anadarko, Oklahoma. So that was our second removal.
Okay, interesting. That really clears it up for me. I was like, why are there two, when I was doing some research? So that really helps. When my ancestors, the Choctaw, were removed from Mississippi in the 1830s, they were placed in what was part of Caddo territory at that time in southeast Oklahoma. Now, the Caddo and the Choctaw were warring tribes, even though the Caddo were loosely related to the Yawani Choctaw. And I've got a video I'll be sure to post on my Native Choctaw Facebook page. It's a video of Joseph Wolf of the Choctaw Nation talking about the Battle of Caddo Hills. The Choctaw used to come into Caddo territory and hunt their buffalo. And of course, the Caddo weren't too happy about this. So, stop messing with our buffalo, man. So in 1808, the Choctaw crossed the Mississippi River and went to war with the Caddo. And the Choctaw did win this battle, returning with poles topped with scalps. So Phil, please don't hold it against me. It was a long time ago. I promise I totally like the Caddo.
Yes, I won't hold that against you. There was a lot of, we had one of our major enemies from before European contact, going way back, was with the Osage, who had a fondness for coming down from their area, down the entire area, just regularly, and creating mayhem and taking lives and just really were destructive to us. So, but that's all in the past. My sister married a prominent Osage, so that helped settle things down in modern times. And so I have a lot of Osage kin and acquaintances and so forth. And in fact, the Caddos and the Osage were big Native American church, or peyote religion, and the two tribes seem to come together on that in a very strong way.
Wow. Again, just our ancestors looking down going, what in the world has happened? But probably glad we've all worked out our differences at this point. It's amazing what can happen when you throw everybody into the same place together. You're either going to kill each other or learn to get along. But so are there any other Caddo stories or, enemies or significant battles you wanted to chat through?
Well, after we were run out of Louisiana and coalesced first around Caddo Lake, which is near Jefferson. It's on the border between Texas and Louisiana, the Caddo Lake. And so we coalesced there, two of us, the Natchitoches and the Caddo Adacho. And the Hassine down south of us there held on. And but as time went on, they joined, the three joined together, and in the aftermath of our signing the treaty to cede our lands, we started roaming north Texas from the border on the east out to the Brazos River, way out in western Texas.
Okay.
And from there through, over the next decade and more, we were engaged in many battles. And there's been documented 50 battles that we were in from and located on the Rio Grande, south part of Texas, up to the Red River, and many deadly encounters because other tribes that had joined us, and there were about 8 or 10 tribes that had come down when Andrew Jackson started his Indian removal policies. Many of them came down and joined us. So many of them joined us in these battles. Those that had arrived recently, to those that were already there, the Comanche and Tonkawa and several others, Wichita, who were already in the area. So these battles would detail. I have a list of it if anybody wants to get that tells who were the tribes involved, how many were killed, where they were, and I made a map of it.
What? I would love to see that. Is that one of the things that you sell on your website, or is it something you just
No, that's I haven't put that together in that form.
Oh, I would love to see that.
I posted it on our some of our Caddo Facebook pages.
Okay.
And it when you look at it, you see all of these spots. I highlight, I put a star of wherever a battle was, and you see it's all over Texas, really.
Wow.
Concentrated in some areas, and how dangerous that time was. That's one of the reasons we ended up with so few members in the 1860s.
A lot of them just didn't survive, huh?
Right.
Wow. I mean, that's what's interesting too, is I think we're so far removed from those times. I think we forget that these were human beings that surely for some of them, on one hand, they were probably ready for war, ready for whatever they had to do to protect their tribe and their people. But at the same time, there had to have been some scared people as well. Can you imagine with, there's things going on in Russia and Ukraine right now, and it stirs up this bit of fear and makes you start thinking, wow, that can happen. It can happen anywhere. But this was going on, what we're talking about right now with our American Indian people, this was going on for centuries. And it probably always feel like there was never quite a safe place, or there was never a time when you could feel totally calm.
True.
There's that human element of things that, you don't hear much about that in the history books, but I'm sure it's out there somewhere. Now, the Caddo lived in grass thatched houses, and you're truly the expert on this topic. In fact, it is said that you're likely the last living person who can completely construct the beehive shaped Caddo style grass thatched house. So tell us more.
The Caddo grass thatched house in the beehive style, which is layered grass from top to bottom, was an iconic feature of Caddo land holdings here and there. The Wichitas have one similar to it. Ours is different in several ways. It over in the late 1980s and into the early 1990s, I started studying it, and I talked to some elders, and they said, "Well, we think we know how it was built, but I found out there were very few that had been built after we were settled around Anadarko in 1859. There's one picture of these Caddo grass thatched houses, round with I guess you could call it a dome. So I kept studying it, and I found in this John Swanton publication that he put out in the 1930s or 1940s that European explorers meeting the Caddos for the first time, each of them described, or several of them described how it was put up. And so I kept looking at that, and I talked to Wichita and other Caddos, and they said, yeah, that's how it was done. So I just took that and said, I'm going to construct one. So I started learning and did it. And I found out on the Caddo side of things, nobody knew anything about it except, yeah, that's how they were done.
Right.
And so, and in time, I have ended up constructing about 5 of these.
Wow.
And just recently, one on Caddo mounds in 2016, which was blown down by a tornado in 2018. Stood there 2 years.
Ah, no.
In fact, I'm just getting ready to prepare a discussion on a Zoom meeting for a culture group in New Orleans about the history of the Caddo house. And so I've approached it from, we have done it almost exactly, well, as completely as we could, like the European explorers described it, which are put up in one day. And these are very large houses, some of them, 30, 40, 50 feet.
Could have been one day, huh?
Yes, and of course, there's a lot of pre-planning. You get the materials, and at the point of day, you bring everything in, and your poles and grass and everything that is needed. And if you've done it for many, many times, then you know exactly what to do, and it goes right up.
Sure, because they did it so many times. I want to hear all about this. This is so fascinating to me. Like, where do you find the materials? What are the materials made of? How do you get that high up to the center? I mean, how did they back in the day? Phil, we need you to come make a new thatched house. What would you do?
Well, I've written a description of it, and there's a video that was made of the house at Caddo Mounds in 2016. And the putting it up is simple if you know how, of course. But I'd say I've being an engineer, I like to do things in measuring ways, metering, I guess, and say, here's how many poles you'll need, here's how long they'll be, here's how much grass you'll need. And when we talk about grass, we talk about a bundle, which is about a square foot. A bundle that has a diameter of about 1 foot. And so you're going to need about 300 of those, and you're going to need this many poles and so forth.
Right.
And you stand them straight up and you bend them. And in the old days, and I've done it myself, and they would plant a center pole, and there'd be a couple of people would go up and bend the poles over and tie them together. The poles are put in first straight vertically, and then these two who are in the center pole will reach out and grab a pole from each direction and tie them up. And then from there, saplings are put on all the way from bottom to the top.
Wow.
On which the grass fits. And
how do they?
That's as quick as I can say it.
That makes it sound easy. I'm sure it's. Well, how did they get the saplings? Did they have a certain tool that they used back then? Just like kind of a spike into the tree, or how did they do that?
Are you talking about harvesting saplings? Is that what you said, or the trees?
Yeah. Yeah. Harvesting the saplings.
Oh, okay. Well, there are hatchets and things before iron tools. You know, we used all kinds of blades attached to a shaft, kind of like a tomahawk, but has a very sharp edge. And so you can cut down a lot of things like that. Or just by holding a big piece of flaked piece of flint and chop at it. You know, it's simple to do that. The other, you're harvesting poles that are about 3 to 6 inches thick. And so those will be chopped all around and then pushed over and harvested like that. There was a house put up at Caddo Mounds by anthropologists back in the 1980s, in which they used all of these tools. And there's a paper that they documented, and they showed, you know, how they harvested trees and so forth, and all the materials. They didn't quite know how to put the house together like we do, so it was, but it went up pretty good, and you know, and preserved, well, to me, demonstrated how stone tools could work.
Right. Wow.
And I have a connection, you know, a report of that. If anybody wants that, I could send it to them.
I want it. Can I have one? Can you email that to me by any chance?
I certainly will. Yeah, I'll mail a number of things to you.
Great. I'm a sponge for knowledge, so I'm not even saying I'm not an expert in any one thing, but I do definitely love to study it all. So,
well, sure. Yeah, well, that's the way I am too.
Right? Just soak it in.
You're right.
So when it comes to, I know that how tall do you think the roof is from the tippy top point down to the ground?
If it's the height of the peak of the frame is related to the diameter. And it's about 3/4 of the diameter, maybe 80%. If it's a 30-foot diameter, then the peak of it would be about 25 to 28 feet in the air.
Okay. Gotcha. Wow. And so in that case, how did they get that high up there to do all this stuff?
Well, to start with, the poles are bent by these guys in the center pole, and they're tied. And so you end up with just a bunch of a framework of a bunch of poles bent and tied at the top. Now, to get the grass on, every saplings were attached to this frame horizontally about every 18 inches from top to bottom, tied onto the frame. And then grass is sandwiched onto those horizontal saplings, runners, laths, you might call them, from starting on the bottom and going up. And in the old days, ladies did all of the climbing. And so there would be a lady for each of the poles that she would thatch her sector from the bottom to the top. And there's a picture of Wichita's doing this, but I don't have one. I've never seen one of Caddo ladies, but Caddo's did the same. I'm not sure why ladies were better suited to it. Maybe they're more limber and able to attach the grass, the bundles of grass. And so they would climb up and standing on these horizontal saplings that had already been attached, and they would use a second sapling to sandwich these bundles of grass onto the frame.
Okay. This is so cool.
So there would be one lady per for every pole. If the diameter of the house, the footprint on the ground, the diameter is about the number of poles you use that are required to be bent and tied for the frame. And so there would be about 30 ladies climbing straight up, and I'm sure they were very good at it. That's why they could do this, just a big house in a let's say by start at dawn, and by 2 o'clock they were ready to eat and do Caddo dances.
Wow, what a day. All in the day of a life of a Caddo.
Yes.
Wow, that's interesting. So when you first started doing this with the houses, did you ever think that it would become such a big thing? I mean, people are looking to you now to help them, pass on this information. And you did the house down in Texas, and then, you're about to do this presentation to this group that's coming up. I mean, I'm assuming you've gone all over the place talking about how you do this and how you build it and that kind of thing. So did you have any idea it would become such a big thing?
Well, no, something like this, you don't know where to lead. I just had a very strong desire to
Preserve,
construct these, and then to write about them. I'm a retired technical writer, which means I've had a pretty long career of writing manuals. Like I can write a complete automobile, how to put it together, or repair manual. And,
you're one of those guys. You're the guy behind the Chilton's book.
Yeah, I'm. In fact, one of my hobbies is reading instructions on how to do things. And,
really?
I critique them. Yeah.
Okay, I think you've crossed the line over to super nerd here, Phil. That's pretty cool.
So anyway, I turned. I said, well, here's how I do it. Now I'm going to explain it to somebody, and that's what I've done. So it's turned.
Great.
I made a lot of presentations on this, and it just grew from. Here's how they look. Here's the description of them. Here's how the Wichitas do them. We do them a little differently, and it just grew from there to, I've had quite an extensive career in it, I guess.
Yeah.
So there's a new one being built in Caddo Mounds in this summer, and I'd like to help, but my health is not good enough that I could stand the heat and travel and that sort of thing.
Yeah, when you said summer, I was like, well, who can stand it? Oh, it's so bad. Like, it's so hot. Well, I hope you'll still get to at least see their progress and see the finished product, if nothing else.
Sure, I will.
So, Indian City out in Anadarko, kind of south of town, obviously it's been closed for a long time, but do you remember, I feel like there was one of those thatched houses out there, but it could have been Wichita, it could have been something else, but did you have a hand in that?
No, I didn't, but the Wichitas put up a house out there, and I know the fellow who did that. In fact, he's the one who helped me on some methods when I started learning. And I have a lot of pictures of that house. I went out and looked at it and looked at all of the components of it, the poles and thatching and all that. And in fact, it got to be my friend after a while there. I was out there so much.
Yeah. Is it still there?
I don't know. It's been quite a while since. I doubt if it's probably been greatly ravaged by now.
Oh, that hurts my heart.
House has been, the park there has been out of commission for a decade or more. I recall.
It's too bad. A lot of, it used to be a fun place for anyone to be able to go and walk down into I think those are called the Tonkawa Hills maybe, but you could see it's beautiful out there, and you could see buffalo in their pen, of course. And then you could see this is for our listeners, you could see different house types of the different, Kiowa and the Caddo or whoever it was at the
Yeah, it's a
time.
shame
So
that I enjoyed being there. In fact, I worked there one summer.
you did?
They got in touch with me and say, "Hey, can you about my archery and bows and arrows?" And they said,
Yeah.
"We'd like to have somebody who can put on demonstrations regularly." So I did that one week and
How
had a
cool is
good
that?
time. So,
Yeah. Was that when OU owned it, or how long ago was that?
no, it was owned by a group, no, well, I guess nonprofit group that had been
Oh,
created
okay.
here,
Wow.
and there was you know, all different tribes were represented in that group. They had a nice little museum.
Yeah, they did actually. I remember that. And then some things you could buy, some little
Right,
anything
right.
from
Had a nice,
trinkets to
yeah, a nice little gift shop.
hmm
Knew a lot of people worked out there.
Wow. I miss those days. I miss going out there and be so hot, but it was so worth it. And I'm really glad that my daughter got to see it when it was opened for a short period of time one summer. And we're like, we have to go. We have to take our kids. So my daughter and niece and nephews all went out there, and I was like, this might be the last time you see it. And it really was. It was the last time we all saw it. So
Uh-huh.
mm. Well, for our listeners, Phil has put together some interesting information on his American Indian Chronicles website, which I'll place on my Native Chalk Talk Facebook page so y'all can check it out. You can purchase DVDs, including on the topic we just mentioned, such as Disinherited, Caddo Indians' Loss of Their Homelands. I think you'd really enjoy it and get a lot out of it. So please check it out, y'all. Again, I'll place that on my Facebook page. A couple more facts about our Caddo friends. There are 6,000 enrolled Caddos today. 3,000 of those live in Oklahoma. And Tejas is the Spanish version of the Caddo word Taisha, which means those who are friends. And from the Spanish version of that Caddo word comes the word Texas. Hello, Texas. Had you heard that before, Phil?
Oh yes, the Dacia is several people are named that around here,
Really?
which means friend, and
Love it.
there's a Tasha Facebook page that I often post
Oh,
things for about, well, like the cattle house and our battles and many other things.
wow. I love it. I love that. Okay, so we've gone over the history of the Caddo. Let's talk about your own background and your family's history. Tell us about the land on which you were raised and what tribal lands that entailed. And by the way, listeners, this is so interesting. You're gonna get a lot out of this.
Well, I think I mentioned earlier that we settled back on our allotted land, which was allotted in 1901, which many tribes, other tribes here were allotted, and 160 acres on Cobb Creek, which is what feeds Fort Cobb Lake out here, Bureau, U.S. Bureau Lake,
Mhm.
and we we were farmers. We raised cash crops of cotton and maize and alfalfa, but and then used a lot of that for feeding our livestock, which we didn't have a big. Uh, we had some horses and
Mhm.
uh, milk cows, hogs, and just existed on our land there. So we were farmers, and so I grew up being around mechanical things like tractors and hayers and uh, trucks and so forth, and they're always in constant need of repair. So that's what I saw all the time. Help my dad do those repairs and maintenance and so forth. And I really
Mhm.
enjoyed it. In fact, that was my early desire, aspiration was I was going to be a good mechanic of some sort. You know, you
Right.
around a lot and putting a wrench on a nut and tightening things or taking things apart is what I truly enjoyed. and anything that could be taken apart, I would do it and put it back together. Like we had an 1873 Winchester rifle, and I, at early age, I could take that apart, every bit of it, and put it back together. And later on, even got bullets to. I found someplace that sold the bullets for it, the cartridges, and wired it up and shot it.
Wow.
I stood back. I wired it up first because I was afraid it might explode, but later on I found out it shot really good. And I could pick a gnat off 100 yards.
Dang. You're like, I had no idea that
So-
this would actually work. Wow. Well, I mean, I laugh because, obviously you became a mechanical engineer. You could see the writing on the wall for you very early on.
Yes. Well, that was a springboard for me. And growing up there, we were poor farmers, but had a good, very strong parents. And in fact, at our school, there were 4 of us that were valedictorians.
Wow.
And salutatorians, and so we did good. And our parents strongly suggested we take some post high school education. Several of my sisters went to Haskell Institute, and then several of us went on to college and have done well in the education field. I ended up at Oklahoma State, where I had took up mechanical engineering, in particular aerodynamics and aerospace, which I had I just like airflow around wings, the aerodynamics and propulsion systems and so forth. And then when I graduated from there, I went to work for a aerospace company in Fort Worth, General Dynamics. Then it later became Lockheed.
Yeah, we kind of know that name. That's big time.
Yeah, and I was there 5 years, and doing mainly flight manuals, which helped the pilot develop a flight plan. In fact, we helped them in flight plans that would deliver nuclear weapons from Carswell Air Force Base there to Russia. In fact, Russia they claimed at that time that the airplane we had manufactured there was the only airplane they were afraid of, because it could fly high, low, and deliver and get gone. So that was an exciting time for me. I made use of my and got to go to Edwards Air Force Base on some jobs where we were trying to check things out. And so I was a youngster, single, and had a great time with it there.
That's fantastic. Coming from a family who does a lot of flying, this definitely appeals to me. It sounds like it was a dream job, right? Especially for a mechanical engineer, because so many of them don't get to end up doing what they really wanted to do. Maybe they basically, for the first 20 years, they're just dealing with the widgets, where you got to do the flight manuals and things like that. Pretty cool.
Yeah, not only that, but we were in flight test performance. So part of our job was following our different test airplanes. So we would go out in the flight line and talk to pilots as they were doing we'd set up test runs with them. And so they'd take off and we'd listen, and they would tell us different things about this and that. And then they'd come in and land, and then they would debrief us, talk about squawks, which mean anything that was out of the way. And so I felt like a big shot sitting in there, me from red dirt, Western Oklahoma. And here I am.
Colony, Oklahoma. Look at that. I love that.
To the highest level of pilots, test pilots, and the most technical advanced airplanes, which I knew much about. Not everything, but I knew what they were saying. So
Well, and were these pilots in the Air Force, or were they private sector?
These were hired by our corporation, General Dynamics. So they were employees of but we did have some Air Force pilots. After the plane was checked out, the Air Force pilots would take them and check them out. And then they'd come back and tell us, if there's any problems,
So
anything
neat.
that they thought was important.
So interesting. I love it. Well, it's interesting too that, again, early on, you were showing signs of, hey, I'm going to become a mechanical engineer someday, just y'all wait. And you also were a little bit of an archaeologist when you were younger. You told me something that made me absolutely salivate, and I'm so jealous. Tell them, Phil, tell them what you found on your land.
Yes, well, our land, our allotment happened to be include almost entirely a village that was dated 1000 AD. And so right where our house sat along the creeks and around the bend there, we would find all of these pottery and arrowheads and hatchets and so forth. And so I grew up, and especially after a good hard rain, it would wash away, the very top of the soil, and these things would just be sticking out all over.
Isn't that a dream come true for people who love history and love seeing remnants of the people that were here before us? Wow. I'm so jealous. Keep going.
It sparked my imagination, being a bow maker and archer and someone who really used these for hunting. It's just, it's recreation too, but over my life I've hunted deer and elk and all kind of small game, coyotes, you name it. And so I was taking things out of the ground there really and making use of them. And I don't know if you can make a greater connection from a former culture
Right.
to current, and using tools even that they used in my recreation and hunting with bow and arrow. So it was a great link all the way around there. There was actually a University of Oklahoma came out the year I graduated high school and did a dig on that land, and it's well documented. It's one of the foremost Western sites that has been in the publications and the history of sites in Oklahoma. So it provided a real platform for me as a youngster and growing older. And I have the report that was done on the site, and one thing that's interesting, they found a number of burials there, and one of them had a arrowhead lodged in its spine.
What?
When I saw that, I thought, that actually happened. No doubt, not. They put it lightly, like not pleasant for the recipient of that arrowhead.
Wow.
And in fact, we were farmers, and we didn't know, we didn't know there was a village there, so we farmed right over that village. Grew cotton and
Oh my God.
maize and things, and later on we said, we didn't know any different, but we might have treated it a little differently if we knew it, and maybe we wouldn't have farmed it.
Well, yeah, but man, how would you have known, first of all? But think of how many of us may have lived on land like that too, where there was stuff underneath our feet and we had no idea. So tell us a little bit more about what you did with the artifacts. And, I think you said it's in a museum, right?
Many of the artifacts that were taken out of there by the University of Oklahoma were put in a museum on the university campus. And some of these are just beautiful things. We were at times our family would go over and look at these things. So it's good they were preserved. There's a lot of pot hunters who came on our land. We didn't know what they were doing some of the time. They hauled a lot of things off, which later on I found out where a lot of it went, but they wouldn't return it to us. So anyway, that's before there were laws on that sort of thing.
Right. But I mean, seriously, I can't imagine going outside, it raining, and then there's like arrowheads sticking up out of the ground, or you could just do a little bit of digging around the house. You might find something. Oh, that would have been amazing.
True. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And we were not pot hunters. I want to make that clear that if something was sticking out of the ground, we'd take it and put it in our collection. Right. But we did not do any digging or any, like, hey, I'm going to go find some pots today that pot hunters do. We didn't do that.
Okay, gotcha. Out of respect for the situation, or?
Yes, pretty much. And it just, to me, it was like, these things will be made known to us by rain or other things, so we'll just wait till that. Maybe it's more a more natural way to go about it.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I wonder how many years it had been since anyone had lived there before y'all moved onto the land. I don't know, was someone living there before you? Because basically, otherwise it was untouched land for many, many years, right?
Well, sort of. It was one of our extended family lived there before we did, and they farmed it, and they found things too. But it was, and that extended family and ours, we were trying to exploit those artifacts. We'd find them and keep it, and that was it.
Yeah.
So from probably the late 1800s through when our family was there, when the allotments came around, people would come in and say, I live over here, so I want that allotment right there. So that's how that happened. And so there would have been farming activities going on there, growing corn and, garden things for going way back.
So now let's talk about your ancestors as something that I like to do on Native Chalk Talk to help honor their memory and keep their stories alive. May they never be forgotten. We can start with your dad. Why don't you tell us his name and about the house where he grew up?
My dad was born on our allotment. It wasn't an allotment. Well, I take that back. It was an allotment. He was born just after 1901. In those days, a lot of people had dugout houses, which means they dug down 6-8 feet and then covered that with some thatching, and that was their home. And he was born on our allotment there in western Oklahoma, and he was born to Caddo parents, and went to school locally there at just a little country school, and grew up. And after graduating from high school, he went to Haskell Institute, where he played on those famous the Haskell Indian football teams up there, and had a good career there. And our family is traced back to we're members of the White Bee group, which was a group that stayed when we were told to get out. We ceded our land in Louisiana. There was a group called White Bee that didn't go west. Our group went north into Arkansas around and came over and stayed with the Choctaws and for a while. And so that was my dad's family ancestry. And on my mother's side, she's a Potawatomi, and our group of Pots, as we call ourselves, started around South Bend, Indiana, and we were friends of the Catholics there. And the story, I guess it's documented, I've never checked into it, is that we gave land to Notre Dame University, in exchange for them feeding us and helping take care of us over, for as long as the rivers flowed and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
But it wasn't too long that we were run out of there and went over into Iowa, and some went up into Wisconsin. In fact, our family is traced back to Green Bay, Wisconsin, where a cattle lady married a Potawatomi lady married a person who had set up a trading post there. And from there, they moved down to Council Bluffs, Iowa, and then down into Kansas later, where they settled on a reservation in around Mayetta, Kansas.
Mhm.
And that's where my mother grew up. And then later on, moved down into Oklahoma and met my dad and started the family. So we have, to me, that's strong roots in tribal lands and history and perseverance and so forth.
Mhm.
Yes,
Indeed.
we can all go back and say, man, how did I ever get here with all that
Right.
turmoil and chaos and danger going on? But
Good point.
so she and she gave us all Potawatomi names also, and of our eight children, brothers and sisters, and my dad knew Caddo and so forth, but it was not a big deal to him to speak or to have have any special cultural sorts of things. So
Yeah.
but we were side by side with plenty of culture people and learned that Caddos
Sure.
and other
Yeah.
tribes.
It's crazy how quickly, once the language started dying out, a lot of that had to do with the boarding schools or just the time and place with what was going on. Once the languages started dying out, it was a quick downhill from there. If you think about it, sometimes it's only 1 or 2 generations removed at this point in some cases. And others,
Sure.
it's like,
Yes.
no, my grandparents wouldn't let my parents speak the language at all or whatever it is. But wow. So let's hear about your grandparents. You could start with your dad's side, mom's side, great grandparents.
Well, my dad's side, my dad's side was his mom. My grandmother was the white bee person that I mentioned, and she and her husband, the first Phil Cross there, she married, and they had a total of about 10 children, and there was only 2 or 3 of them that lived, to survive infancy.
Yeah. Wow.
So that was my grandmother and grandfather.
Mm-hmm. And what were their names?
Frances Elliott was my grandmother's name.
Okay.
Caddo, white bee Caddo.
Okay.
And on my mother's side, grandmother grew up on the Mayetta Indian reservation, or the Indian reservation at Mayetta, Kansas, Potawatomi. And she married a half Pot, half Irish person, and they had a whole bunch of kids, like 10. And she could tell stories that would just curl her hair about their existence there.
Wow.
I don't know how they survived.
Like
they
what? Do you remember some of those?
Well, he was a heavy drinker, and that was some of her favorite stories, that he and his partners would get drunk and they'd just terrorize the reservation a while. But he did good work and so forth when he wasn't drinking.
Yeah.
But their main source of survival was raising chickens, and they would, it was a year-round undertaking, and so they had gardens and so forth there.
Yeah.
But it was a very, very severe existence.
Wow.
And with that many children, and most of them got hauled off to boarding schools. My mom did. In fact, she came down. Her boarding school was at Pahuska, finally, where they were little kids,
Uh-huh.
And they were really strict on, she said they used to get up at daybreak and they'd all line up and they'd march here and there to do their classwork, or their chores and so forth. And
Wow.
they, she said they could talk their language, Potawatomi, which she knew very well, but it wasn't encouraged. She never said they couldn't talk it, but it was, it was just the sister. It's called a sister school, and the nuns there, and they didn't go out of their way encouraging cultural things.
Right. Sounds like it wasn't as bad as some of them may have been, but was still not great.
Right. And my dad ended up at a Catholic church here in Anadarko. St. Michael's, is that the name of it? He went to school here when he was about in the 6th or 7th grade. And they found out he was such an athlete that they told the Haskell Institute then. And so they came down and enlisted him, and he became the football player. They said he could really run fast. And one of the older sisters I talked to years ago, she said, "Yeah, I remember him." And she was 90 years old.
Wow.
And he didn't say much about it. He said, "Oh, he could really run fast." And that's how he got, and he was muscular and stocky, and he was built for it.
Do you have photos of him?
Yeah, I have photos of his, a whole lot of photos on our tractors on our farmland, and then several of the in a group photos for the Haskell Institute.
Okay, yes, please. That is so fascinating. And I've talked here and there about different athletes that were American Indian, but at the same time, I haven't done one single episode that has all of these great athletes in there. Yeah, they need more attention, I think.
Well, one sideline to that is that our Potawatomi ancestry is Jim Thorpe's
no way
family. My grandma's sister or first cousin, I'm not sure which, the name was View, and that came to be the name of Jim Thorpe's family, as he somehow,
wow,
whatever twists and turns it took to, when he grew up over here at the Sac and Fox.
No way.
We're like second or third cousins to him.
Oh my gosh, isn't that crazy then? So your dad, who was a really fast runner, oh my gosh, I wonder how many other people in the family were fast runners. That's crazy.
Well, I wasn't very fast, but I was really tricky. You know what I mean?
Shifty. That's neat though. I mean, who knows? There could have been other people even in the family who, if they were given the opportunity, maybe they could have also been a whole entire slew of folks out there, Thorpes and Crosses, I don't know, that could all run. Anything more about your grandparents, great-grandparents? Do you know anything about the ancestors that go way back?
On my dad's side here, my grandfather and grandmother had this nice piece of land there. It straddled a creek, Cobb Creek, and it was fertile, so they raised crops. And my grandfather raised horses that he sold to the army. And he was quite an enterprising guy. And so they were prominent there in that area. And we ended up with one horse that had been an army horse that we rode around, a great big tall sorrel, red coated. And he was ornery. I tell you, only my dad could really handle him. The girls rode him around every now and then, but sometimes they'd come back and say he had thrown them off and gone somewhere, So we had quite an industrious family there. My dad started in just a little school. I mean, just one of those one-roomers, first grade through 6th or 7th. Then when he went to St. Michael's here, So they were able to make do. And when allotment came around, see, they were there probably, I think my grandmother was born in 1886. So
Okay.
in that period is when they got together and settled there. And then when allotment came, they said, we're on, they'd show them a map and said, that's it right there. And that's our allotment. That's what we want. That's how I hope to write a book on what happened on allotment day. Because there was a lot of stuff going on. Some people weren't allotted, didn't want an allotment, but they were given one anyway.
Huh.
And so I can imagine, the day of allotment, some people would come by and I guess they'd line up and say, okay, we didn't want it to begin with, as most tribes didn't. But they said, well, you got to take it. And, where are you? And here's the creek. And, most of the allotments follow these streams straight up from here up to, all in this area. So I've got the original allotment maps and you can just see it flowing.
Wow.
In one of those areas. So it would have been momentous. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah.
Big, important event, selecting your allotment or not selecting one. And you get one over here's your allotment over here.
Right, here you go. You have to hope that it's something you like.
Right. And it would be interesting to see who didn't want one but got one anyway. I've done a lot of work on. If you go to my website, I have a document called the Indian Reservation and Allotment Era in Oklahoma, but mainly it is the western side of the state, the tribes out here. Every allotment I've got on that document. Somebody must know about it, then they can trace their ancestry directly to it. Here's the map, and here it is. And not only the map, but the ledger that describes the person, gender, age, family, like a father and so forth.
I never really pictured in my head, okay, they all stood in this line on enrollment day for the Dawes rolls, and they had to go in there, and sometimes they had to bring a witness to say, yeah, this is my cousin, and yes, they are Cherokee or whatever. Yeah. You mentioned to me once that you were intrigued by the drum. How so?
Well, it's been part of my life from early on. One of my first recollections is being at a community center where I grew up at Colony, Oklahoma. And I remember I was sleeping in the car parked right outside the building, and I heard drumming and songs, and I remember raising up and looking towards the lights in the community center there. And that's always stuck with me, and maybe that was instrumental in planting something deep in me as from then on. And we regularly had almost weekly Saturday evening had songs and dances. These were Cheyenne Arapaho, and then I'd regularly go to Caddo dances over near Binger, and where our Caddo Nation is headquartered now. So it's been a big part of my life, and as soon as I could, back in late high school, I would sit at the drum occasionally, but and try to follow along. And then some years later, really got into it by going to the drum as often as I could, and it's just a pleasant, inspiring feeling to me to be at a drum. Drumming easily or hitting the drum with force and being able to sing and lead songs has just been one of my great successes to me. Something I always wanted to do in a reasonably learned manner, and have been able to do that.
Sounds like you take a lot of pride in that.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I'm just I'm proud. I've accomplished what I have in it, and it's just a great feeling. And when I hear songs now, I think, oh yeah, I can sing that, I can drum that. I often do get my drum out and drum and sing along with songs. So it just gives me a great sense of accomplishment and good feeling doing it. I feel it has healing powers. A lot of drummers say they experience uplifted feelings and emotions and feel like they're being healed at the drum.
Interesting. Well, and what's so fascinating to me is, I grew up hearing the drumming, but when I step back and think about, like, let's say someone has never heard it before and is hearing it for the first time. Well, and even to someone who has been hearing it my whole life, it's fascinating to me that there is a rhythm, it's a song, it's a piece that you guys have all learned over time. There's a lot of traditional and standard pieces out there, and then some that are more obscure, but it almost sounds like, well, how do they know where they are in the piece? But you guys always know where you are. I've never seen anyone mess up or get out of the rhythm. How do you learn that? It's been passed down, correct? Just orally, not.
Well, that's a good point. In fact, most of the songs that are sung are chant songs, and a lot of hey yo and hey ya and so forth. But they have a definite pattern of the start of the chorus and ending and the drum beats, and each song, many of the same songs, say intertribal or often called war dance songs, have the same style of starting and heavy drum beats and so forth. And you can't. I don't know there's any way of learning it other than to be there and listening and then repeating it.
Right.
But there's a pattern to these songs, just a definite pattern, starting, middle, chorus, and ending.
Okay.
And once you get that down, then you learn the chant and the syllables to it, and you got it made, and you said, yeah, I could start that one. That's what most people, drummers, say. Are looking at each song and saying, now I'm going to learn this and I'm going to be able to start it, which is a whole lot different than following, because you got to have the right tone and pitch and so forth to start, and the chant part of it, and it's. I've heard a lot of people just starting out said, "Man, how frightened they were to
Oh,
start
I
one."
bet.
I was
Yeah.
that way too.
Well, that's really interesting. What else can you tell us about the drum?
Well, I may have mentioned this earlier, but one of the things I really regret is that I didn't sit down and, especially after I got out of high school and where I was learning songs and being at the drum, although I was away at school and then away at a job and later on. But then I was not able to sit down with some of the premier drum head singers of Caddo and Kiowa and Apache and Comanche and Cheyenne the Arapaho and other tribes. I just think of some old guys. I said, man, I wish I could have been there. Sat
Yeah.
with them, listened to them, and learned how they sang it, because some sing them a little different, not much, but so I have that great regret. And I tell kids that I said, you may one day say, man, I wish I'd have sat down with Phil Cross, because he knew a lot of these songs, and he sang them well. And here I am now, and he's gone, and I'm sitting here saying I could have been part of his life there and learned from him. That's what I tell him anyway.
Yeah. So I hope that any young person who's listening to this right now will really consider that, sit down and learn all you possibly can. It can't hurt you, and you just might end up wanting to use those skills later. It's good advice. Thanks, Phil.
Right.
So,
Right.
tell us about, your Caddo. And I know that you go to these dances and you do the drumming, but can you tell us about the dances themselves?
Well, we have retained some 8 or 10 different dances, many of them named for animals, bear dance, fish dance, and that sort of thing. And uh, many of them, virtually all of them, are mixing dancers, where at some point a man or lady will join in and they will dance finish out the dance. And we have a generally soft beat. In fact, some old caddos I just said they've had a drumstick all their life, same stick,
Wow.
a wooden dowel, a wooden shaft,
Right.
maybe dogwood shaft, and wrapped with leather at the end, because we drum gently, and it's opposed to the intertribal that hit the drum as hard as they can hit it.
Hmm.
And I've done that myself too. And sometimes when I've given talks on drumming, I will mention the difference between our gentle drumming and the intertribal, many of the big powwow drumming you hear. And I will tease my Plains Indian fellows that I said, they sound like a bunch of wild Indians, Of course, it's fun for us to talk like that, tease
Oh, there's
ourselves,
so much banter.
And I get chuckles from so, and we have just in general nice, easy steps in circling the arena, and some of these vary in length. We have our main turkey dance, which could last an hour. In the old days, they lasted probably a couple of hours because there were so many songs. We don't sing that many songs now. And some of them are just, probably less than 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes at the most. And a friend of mine described these as, these songs are held in close to our hearts, and they unite young and old, infirm and healthy, and bring us together.
Yeah.
Especially with the dances.
Yeah. I'm thankful that the dances and the songs and the drumming have survived everything that has happened to the Caddo tribe and all of our tribes over time. We're going to pause for a moment to hear from Lowell Edmonds, also a Caddo gentleman from my hometown in Anadarko, Oklahoma. And fun fact, when I was a teenager, I was homeschooled. So during the day, I would stop my schoolwork to go into this Christian bookstore and cafe owned by some sweet folks from our church, Max and Johnita Talley. And my sister and I waited on Mr. Lowell when he'd come into the art cafe. So anyway, Lowell will tell us a little bit about his dad, who was a well-known Indian drummer and singer, and about the Caddo turkey dance. I was reading about how the Caddo say their creation started when they emerged in Louisiana out of a cave called Chakanina, or the place of crying. Moon was the name of their leader, and he told his people to not look back. And an elder man, when they were coming out of the cave, was carrying a pipe, a fire, and a drum. And so these are the items that are sacred to the Caddo people. So Lowell Dwayne Edmonds Sr., right?
Yes, ma'am.
That's your daddy. Right. And I had the pleasure to
Wimpy Edmonds is what
Wimpy?
Everybody called him. Wimpy.
And by the way, so your nickname's Juju, and your dad his was Wimpy, his nickname, right?
Uh-huh.
And then they used a lot of wood and clay tools. And even when people died, the men and women were buried with the tools because they saw them as sacred. They helped them with cooking the meals and carving things and all that. And I also thought it was interesting that the Caddo decorated their bodies. So they would embellish with painting their skin, and they had ear piercing and hair decorations, and of course braids, and then they'd adorn their hair with bird feathers and animal fur and tattooing. So they were very decorated people, apparently.
My dad, like I said, he was keeper of the songs, so he was at all the powwows. He done the flag song, the bell dance songs, quapaw dance, snake dance. I mean, all the dances.
Wow.
He knew all the dances, and he did that. And that was inbred, because of Grandpa Houston. My grandpa, he done the bell dance and all those song dances too. And that's like I said, because Dad, he knew all the funeral songs too. And at the funeral, he cut loose with songs, and to me that I kind of went that way. But I always go to funerals, and I don't sing that much because I can't sing his quality, and I feel like I'm not that. I can't live up to the standards that my dad had, because
It's very respectful of you, but I bet you're a lot better than you think.
I mean, I'll sing in my bedroom, but I'll be singing songs
In the shower.
Yeah, when nobody's around me, but,
right.
Yeah, but I mean, I just don't feel I could live up to the standards that he had. That everybody. That's Wimpy. That's Wimpy. And,
He's well known in these parts, wasn't he?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
and,
that's right.
And Grandpa and Grandma, he was married to Grandpa Houston, and she's got a beautiful name. I can remember it. Spybuck. Anyway, I was real close to her because when she passed away in the house, and we were helped getting wood and stuff, and they wouldn't let us go in the house, and I guess she had a heart attack. And then I went in. They said there was a chicken leg there, and they said, "Here, Juju, here, this is for you." And I said, "I guess it was what she was going to have for supper." And
so they gave you the chicken leg.
Yeah.
Oh.
And but Grandpa, I don't know how time he was married, and all those kids.
He got around with the ladies.
Everybody. I mean, he was such an awesome man, and when he passed away, he stayed with us, and he laid sometimes and he'd kick his leg,
Yeah.
Then in the morning I'd wake up and he'd be hitting on the wall singing morning dance songs.
Really? That's so cool.
And I'd be laying there listening to him. He'd be hitting the wall singing.
Wow.
And then at nighttime, same thing, and
yeah. Did you love it?
Oh yeah, I missed it so much after he passed away. Yeah, when he passed.
Do you know what year he passed?
No, in the 90s, I think.
Yeah.
But I did Dad's funeral when he passed away. I did my dad's funeral down here in Anadarko. I did my Aunt Cordelia. That was his sister. She had like 8 kids, and one of her boys played ball with Johnny Bench. He was same age
the
as
famous Johnny Bench from Binger, Oklahoma. And you talked about how proud you are of your dad about the turkey dances and how he would do the drumming and the singing and all that. And I was doing a little research on it, and it said there were homecoming celebrations when the warriors and the hunters would return from warring or hunting, and so the hunting party would begin their journey home, and then a runner would be sent ahead to tell the women about how well they did and their good fortune while they were on their hunts and such. And then a little bit more information on it, which I thought was so interesting. So this is actually, believe it or not, straight from Wikipedia. So I'm told from Wikipedia that it's one of the most important traditional dances among Caddo people. And as you mentioned to me before, Lowell, that the women, they will wear, turkey, is it turkey feathers? Or what does their regalia look like?
They have that comb, that
like a crown.
Crown, yeah. And have their dresses there. I don't know what you call them. Now my auntie, Charlene, they all, a lot of them, I mean, they still do make dresses and,
great.
patterns and do it. but they have like dust cuts and there's different kind of stuff. The women know, but I don't, because I just never, was around turkey dancing. I mean, to get to know the terms and everything. I mean, I just went down and watched them, and and kind of admire them, because they be dressed really nice with mirrors, down the ribbons down the back, and like I said, they make those dresses and moccasins, and then they wear those hair.
Well, Wikipedia says the dance takes place in the afternoon and is finished by sunsets when turkeys return to their roosts. Caddos traditionally founded their villages and camps near turkey roosts because the turkeys served as sentinels, creating noises when people approached. Very smart. So, but your dad would do the drumming for when everyone was dancing, and
they danced around them. They had the drum right there, and they would kind of like what they showed you with Grandpa and them. I was pointing out to you,
sitting around, and
yeah.
It says, in the day of Caddo dances, the turkey dance is the first one performed, and it has several phases. So in the past, the women danced around a pole, and then during the third phase, the women cluster around the men drumming in the center of the dance area. During the final phase, the women dancers get to choose male dance partners. The dance is concluded with a flag song and the lowering of the U.S. flag in honor of Caddo veterans. I love that. And then the dance movements of the women may have been inspired by turkey movement. So I bet that looks interesting.
There's some of them that can really dance. They're good. They're good.
I bet.
Yeah, they're good.
Well,
I admire them.
I bet. You got to have a lot of energy too.
Because a lot of times it'd be hot. I don't see how they dance. It'd be so hot, and you have to take a break, and give them some fluid, and
for sure. Well, and Binger, which is where you live in Anadarko now, but you lived a good portion of your life in Binger.
Binger Y.
The Binger Y.
Binger Y.
And really, Binger is that is the headquarters, basically, of the Caddo tribe, I believe, right?
Yeah, we're just 5 miles east of Binger. I mean, that's closer than Koger, or
true,
or those other places.
Yeah, and that's usually where they hold these turkey dances. So if anyone ever travels to Binger, Oklahoma, be sure to go during the turkey dance, month or time of year when they do it. And so now I want to, since we were talking about regalia, today I'm loving Lowell's ribbon shirt. So tell me about the ribbon shirt and who made it for you.
Okay. The shirt, when my dad passed away, his wife they're ex now. But anyway, she gave me one of his shirts, and it's an older one. You can tell it's an older one.
Yeah.
And then when I was going to the VA, I'd go to meetings at the VA, and I helped them with their powwow. They have one in November, their Thanksgiving powwow in November, and then they have Red Earth. They have Red Earth in Oklahoma City. And
that's a big one.
Yeah, and they used to parade, and I was part of that group, so I didn't have a shirt. So I talked to my auntie, Charlene Brown Hodge, and her and her friends, she's got a couple of friends that they do a lot of. They make blankets and stuff like that. I mean, they're good. And I asked her about a shirt, and she said if I got the material, she'd make it for me.
So nice.
So yeah, I got it and everything, and she said what colors, and I told her, I said the shirt blue be fine. I said, but I said you're the seamstress. You're the you know what colors look good and what
on the ribbons.
Yeah, and the ribbons and stuff, and then she brought it to me. Said, "Oh, look, this is how." I said, "Man, that's beautiful."
It really is. It's nicely done. Too.
I've only worn it probably about 4 times since I got it during the Red Earth and powwow in Oklahoma City at the VA.
Yeah.
I used to hang out. Well, since I had my degree in sociology and I got a degree, I'd go to the meetings at the VA. And the lady let me sit in since I had a degree and everything. I could, because a lot of guys are up there and they're struggling. They're trying to, kick alcohol or drugs or whatever's bothering them, and they have a hard time, and we sit with them and talk with them, and they used to little, you're not you're not a part of the group per se, but you got your degree and everything, and you're trying to help everybody. He said, you just come on in, you're all right. But it hurts to see those guys struggling. I mean, I struggled with alcohol for a long time, and
sensitive subject, but it's definitely a higher rate in the Native American culture, which I think has to do somewhat with historical trauma, and some of the terrible atrocities that happened in many years past. But what's your take on it?
Everybody's different to me. I mean, like, I drink alcohol, and I'd get pulled over at 2:00 in the morning driving my Camaro, and so all I did was drink beer. I didn't drink whiskey. I didn't drink wine. I didn't do pot. All I did was drink 3.2 beer. Like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, back on the back roads,
Right.
And that's all I did. But then you have others that drink whiskey or wine or whatever, and they prefer, or a lot of them like to smoke and do that. But like I said, it was strange with me because all I did was drink beer. I wouldn't drink anything else, and that was enough to get me.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was enough to get me, and then I just quit. I just quit that one. I just in 09. June 6, 09. I just stopped.
You did. You just
stopped. Yeah,
wow.
Just stopped and haven't had a drink since then.
And you remember that day, June 6,
2009.
It's a good day. Congratulations.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they say to take it day by day, so I don't want to jinx anything. But
no, you're not going to jinx it. If I hadn't done it by now,
that's true. No, you are on a good path.
I'm an old man.
Path.
Yeah.
Do you have any words for anyone that might be struggling with addiction today? A message of hope or anything?
But I did. Sometimes I went a long time, and then I just had to go drink, and then sometimes I just drank like, a week or two or something, and then like I said, I even did AA when I wasn't drinking. I used to work in the AA in Anadarko. Yeah, I used to do 5 when I did end up quitting, and I had 5. I'd do 5 meetings. I'd run 5 meetings during the daytime. Then I'd go in at night and run 2 Tuesday and Thursday run meetings for those that had that. Sometimes just quarter pointed. You had to have those, and a lot of them couldn't get off in the daytime because they had day jobs. So I'd go in. It was 4 Tribes Consortium. I used to go in there and work on Tuesday and Thursday nights and sign papers for those that needed it, because you're supposed to have so many signatures and stuff. So I did that for a long time, and then when they stopped that position, and it's just like like I had nothing to do, so I just went back and started drinking, and I'm like, and then that one time I said, no, this is it. I ain't do this no more, and just stopped, just cold turkey, just June and night, and
wow,
yeah,
never looked back, huh?
To this day, haven't had
great.
any alcohol at all or anything.
It's definitely something to be proud of.
It's a God thing.
Yes, it is. It has to be, because I don't know how anybody else gets there. I guess to each his own, but man, that's going to be a hard thing to kick.
But people remember you. I mean, they'll bring it up, and then remember when you I said, well, that was a long time. That was before, I said, I don't do that no more, but I'll talk with you about it, but I don't do it,
right?
So,
stop trying to pigeonhole me back in that
place. You think
you're
too good? Because I don't think I'm too good. I said, it's just time for me to quit.
It's something interesting that you say it that way. That I think there's people that they probably have good intentions, but they can hold us back, like, oh, you oh, you have so much money now, or oh, you are so educated now, or oh, you don't drink anymore, you think you're better than us. And it's like that makes you want to.
That part right there, what you're saying.
Yeah, right. It's like,
That
hold me back.
That was
let
to
me
let
move
in.
forward.
You think you're better than us. You're not better. And that's not even the thought. But that's what they use to try to get to you. So
Exactly.
You think you're better than us. You think you're so good. I'm just trying to. I'm just trying to survive, live day to day. So because there's nothing. I mean, there's no guarantee that, hey, I might go drink a beer or something, or start drinking again. Then what do you say? I mean,
right. Right.
But so far, praise the Lord, I haven't.
That's great.
Yeah, I went to closest I came. I went my granddaughter's graduation in Carnegie.
Mm-hmm.
I went, and I was living in the city, so I drove by myself on the interstate. I got there to the gym, to the auditorium, and watched. So when I gave her a present, we went to where they were eating, and now I had beer all over the place. And so then I'm looking at beer, and I haven't drank since '09, and so I get back in my car, and I'm leaving Carnegie, and I pull over at that store up there, going out by the Mexican restaurant, going out of town.
Right.
And they're having an Indian rodeo, and all the Indians are coming in buying 6-packs and everything, and I'm standing there with my tea, and I'm like, and then someone says,
with my tea.
Yeah.
Was it sweet tea or regular tea? That's an important question. Okay, thank you. We can still be friends. Go ahead.
And then I'm like, I'm looking at it, and then I hear, hey, you're going to interstate back. To Oklahoma City. It's dark. It's after 9 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock. No one's going to see you drinking.
Right.
Just you can get your beer this time and drink some beer on the way
Devil
home.
on your shoulder.
And I'm like, yeah, to put that tea back. Like, no.
No, don't do it. Don't do it.
So I got my tea and went north and hit interstate by Hydro and Hinton. Yeah. And came on back, but that's the closest I ever come to drinking again. Yeah. It was because of my grandbaby's graduation, celebrating with all the relatives and stuff.
I can't imagine. It's got to be hard.
It was then for some reason. I mean, it's just
something triggered in
just
you.
trying to get tricked or something.
Yeah. So what do you think about? I mean, you live in an area that there are more Native Americans there than anywhere in the world, actually, statistically and per capita. Do you think that this is as great of an issue as I read about when I'm looking at statistics and some of the trauma that's been passed down and to the Native American within the Native American population, alcoholism or addiction in general? I mean, there's the casinos, there's the drugs, there's alcohol, and again, it can hit any population, but we know that statistically it is pretty high. And I do think that there are valid reasons for it. I also think that it can be conquered, and you are a great example of that. But do you agree that there is kind of a widespread issue there?
I don't know. I mean, we all have our own opinions and everything, and it was. I couldn't figure out because when I was in Oklahoma City, I was living in a friendship home, which is a home for people homeless people, and there was 21 of us guys staying there, and there's like 3 of us in each room. Had to share a bathroom, and and I was in there, and but I had stopped, and I don't know. It's hard to explain. I didn't have. And I'd go down Bricktown, walk around Bricktown, go in Mexican restaurant and sit in the bar, or I'd go down to the bowling alley where everybody's drinking and drink tea. And they said, "Juju, you want some more tea?" They called it Juju tea. Juju tea. And well, that's when they had like thunder would be that thunder night when they had a pizza. And I'd sit there and the people were drinking around me, partying, and I
had
just
no problem.
no problem.
Yeah.
And I'd go up to all those restaurants, Buffalo Wild Wings and all those places, and never was even have the urge to, not even, and it was I don't know, it stumped me is what it did, because I'm like, how can I used to go out and drink and get a case of beer and ice it down and go drink it, and then now I don't even want to drink. I don't even care. I'm not even thinking about wanting to, and I'm like, I just sit there, sometimes just wonder, God, what causes, what's this now? I used to drink like crazy, like there's no tomorrow, and then now I'm like, I don't even think about it. I don't even, and it used to baffle me. I mean, to me, it's a God thing.
For sure.
That,
for sure.
And I mean, to me, I don't know. I mean, I'm not the smartest guy, and but but I've been sober for almost 09. This is what, 21.
21.
Gonna be 12 years. Well, last month it was 12 years without a drink.
It's a victory. Definitely a
You
victory.
ain't lying, it is. Yeah.
So, what else would you like to know about your family or your culture, or anything related to, I don't know, your day to day as a Native American or anything else?
I don't know. I'm really like over. I mean, I've witnessed so much stuff. I didn't finish telling you, but when I was telling you, my dad, where he used to live at, just down the road from the casino now, and when I was going to church, and I'd go by Dad's, and I'd go in the house, and he said, "What's that you got?" And I said, "Anointing oil." He said, "What's that for?" I said, "To anoint people and pray for them." He said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." And we'd go eat lunch with them. And there'd be probably about 3 or 4 families come up there and eat together, And then he'd ask me that, and I'd walk up and he opened the door. He had a sliding door, a patio door, and he had his wood burning stuff. He loved burning in the wintertime, how Indians are. And he said, "Did you bring your oil?" And I said, "No." He said, "Oh, okay." And then my little brother, he was going to church too. We was all mostly going, but Dad wasn't. And then when he went in, he said, "Did you bring your oil?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" He said, "Oh, I was just wondering." And you know what? He ended up giving his life to the Lord, and he started having church in his den.
Yeah.
He started having everybody go up there because he knew all the songs. I mean, he in Naturesville first singing and praising the Lord, and just by taking your little oil with you, and just he said, "What is that?" I said, "Anointing oil." "What does it do?" "Well, what's it for?" "Well, to pray for people, anoint,
Yeah.
Yeah, and then my cousin, Uncle Lewis, his brother, he had a daughter, and she went going to church, and I ended up baptizing her at Fort Cobb Lake.
It's great.
And then she got saved, and her sister got saved, and then the whole house got saved, And
that's so cool.
I baptized my little brother at Fort Cobb. Midgie, I baptized her. I baptized this Inkanishy boy, which means white boy.
Or as you said about my brother-in-law, Mayo. Where's Mayo earlier?
I didn't say Mayo.
What did you say then? I thought you said Mayo.
I was wondering why you was laughing.
What did you say?
I can't remember, but it wasn't Mayo. Okay. I was wondering why you was laughing.
Oh, yeah, she and I both were laughing hard. Okay, anyway, go ahead. Sidetracked.
Mayo with pickles.
It's the best kind. Oh, my gosh.
But anyway, I know where y'all grew up at. I mean, I know where y'all come from, and y'all used to have that store and lunches over there.
Yeah.
You don't remember becoming? Well,
I do. No, I do actually.
No, you don't. You're just saying.
No,
that
I really do. Skylar and I both do.
Well, Skylar, yeah. I mean, that was my buddy. That's who I used to talk to, hang out with. But I mean, I knew you was there, but I didn't pay much attention to you because you just.
I started working there when I was 12.
With that stringy hair. And,
yeah. I was a feral child.
Feral.
Wild.
Oh.
Meaning anyway. So I was a good kid. I was just a little crazy. So when for my listeners, what Lowell's talking about is that my sister and my mom and I used to work at it was Sea of Galilee Christian bookstore and the Ark Cafe. So in the front was a bookstore and then in the back was a cafe. So I would work at the bookstore and then go wait tables in the cafe part, where my sister also waited tables, and my mom worked in the back making the sandwiches. And so Lowell would come in and see us. What did you order there? Do you remember? There was the pita pouch.
I remember that.
It was called the kangaroo. That's what it was called.
You also have kangaroo? Is that what I ate?
The pita pouch was called a kangaroo, but I don't remember what you ate. Probably Skylar was waiting on you.
Probably.
But there was the giraffe.
I think you was just in the way.
Did she pay you to say this? Is my sister here somewhere? But we had so much fun there, and we always kept the sweet tea coming because there was always a lot of need for sweet tea. Then we had a lot of regulars come in and out. Virginia Reimer and Larry from the lumber yard. We always called him Larry Turkey.
Yeah, they're all gone too now, aren't they?
I know. It's really sad. There's so many of them gone, and they were good people. They were like our community. I mean, again, the same people came in every day. You know, there was probably like 10 of them that came in every day. And then, of course, there'd be a slew of other people here and there.
It's kind of like the eatery is now. You know, you have the same. And
exactly.
That's
I love that place.
You at.
That's right. So yeah, the other day, my family and I, we were eating with our good friend Lonnie in what's called the Eatery in downtown Anadarko. And Lowell was in there, and I kept staring at him going, I know the face. How do I know the face? And
I'm used to being stared at. You know,
the ladies love Lowell.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Honka boom love, baby.
You told me you were going to bring your Elvis out. And then, so I basically stalked Lowell as he was leaving the restaurant. I'm like, hello, can I talk to you for a second?
I'm used to being stopped by pretty women, so that's all right.
It's a rough life. Somebody's got to lead it, right? Yeah, so when but he turned, Lowell, you turned around and you looked at me and you're like, you're Rachel Schaffner from Hog Creek. I scared you. Why is this woman following me? But it was really interesting because you turned around and I said, my name is, and you said, you're Rachel from Hog Creek. I'm like, yeah, I lived in Hog Creek outside of
Did you say that's what my brother told me? Did I tell you that?
No.
He said, we changed my tire, and then he said, I was talking, and I said, I seen Tina and her old man the other day. He said, where at? I told him. He said, oh, yeah. She told me she saw you. I said, really? He said, who's this Rachel girl? I said, what? He said,
word gets around.
He said, Rachel girl, who's that? I said, you know, they used to run that restaurant over there. And he said, oh, that? I said, yes. He said, yeah, Tina, come out. Who's that Rachel girl? Who's that girl? He want to talk to Uncle Lowell. Anyway.
Yeah, how funny is that?
Keep with your story. Go ahead.
No, that's it. I thought it was funny that we ran into each other, that you remembered me. So that's funny because I remembered your face. But anyway, good time.
So was the face.
Yeah, it's always the face. Well, this has been a lot of fun, and I've learned a lot from you, and it's been a very enjoyable experience. I hope you have felt the same, and hopefully we'll get a chance to continue talking and sharing information over time. So thank you for your time. Okie.
Thank you, Mr. Lowell, for sharing about your dad and about the turkey dance, and we wish you well. So, Phil, not only are you a mechanical engineer and happen to be the only Caddo remaining who can completely build the Caddo-style grass-thatched house, but you also just so happen to be an expert flute maker made from river cane. You study foods of the early Caddo, you brain tan, the Indian method, of course. You create buffalo rawhide, parfletch items, and rawhide shields, and you're a bow maker. Yeah. So, what have I been doing with all my time? Wow. So, thanks for making us all look pretty lazy, Mr. Phil. So let's talk about your bow making, because I think that is so fascinating. And for our listeners, Mr. Phil here has been featured as a bow maker in a number of television programs, including Is This a Great State or What on Channel 4, Oklahoma City, and Outdoor Oklahoma on OETA. So tell us more about it. How'd you learn these skills? Who taught you, or did you teach yourself? Tell us more.
Well, it's been part of my life since as young as I can remember. I remember making bows as you know, 5 or 6 year old. Just the simplest, a stick with a string on it. But I had people, elders around me, both Caddo and Shine Arapaho, who made these top of the line bows out of bowdark, also called Osage orange, and it. And so I had a bow in my hand. In fact, the tradition in former times and into historic times here was that at a birth of a boy would have a small bow placed in his surroundings, in blankets and crib and so forth. And then when we die, our favorite bow is put in the coffin with us. It's practiced a bit yet today, but
Oh, yeah.
it's something that's kind of gone along.
That's so
But anyway,
special. Very special.
The name of the wood, bowdark, was given to us by French explorers who came, and they were just gushing over the fact that the Caddos down where they met us down in Louisiana and in our homelands, Texas and Oklahoma, Arkansas, that they had the finest bows. They mentioned them, and that the bows were other Indian tribes would come and trade for them, and trade for the wood to make their own bows. So I was been attached to that, back into historic times, and it just stayed with me. And as I get little older and I could make the bows that were taught me to make the top of the line hunting bows or target bows. I learned that from them, and later on, many people accepted my bows around here, and I've sold some internationally and nationally as some of the finest these people say that they've ever had. So it's been a long companion of mine, and I have a wall full of them here that I've kept, and every now and then I look up and just remember each one, how I made it, its specifications and that sort of thing. And also we had target shoots, bow shoots around here, and participating, and all of them are bowdark bows, some made by the fellow shooting them, and I've made some of them. So it's a tradition that's still strong in Indian country, and others also. The non-Indians have a lot of bow shoots and clubs that mainly center on the bowdark wood. It's called Osage orange too. That's its commercial name.
Oh, really? Okay. So, and then I assume to shape the bow, you're probably getting it wet, or just tell us how it's made. Curious.
Well, many bows are made from like a 6-foot long branch or tree trunk that's about 6 inches in diameter. If you go much smaller than that, it's the grain isn't good. And you let it dry out anywhere from 6 months to a year and beyond, and then you split the logs out and start trimming them down until until I have something like about 2 inches wide, or 3 or 4 inches wide and 2 inches deep, and then I just carve the bow out of that. The bow wood is very, very hard, and you have to know what you're doing and how to follow the grain and a number of rules so that your bow won't break and meets and can stay straight and doesn't deform and lose its power. It's a long process, and I have a booklet I made many years ago for the Boy Scouts that a lot of people still use. And if people want to get in touch with me, I'll send them a copy of it. It's just a booklet, but I had a lot of people use it and say, "Yep, that does the trick."
Wow. So it's more of an art than I even thought. I can't imagine breaking it when you've spent months to let it dry out and all the things you have to go through. That would be so disappointing to break it in the middle of it. Has that ever happened?
Oh yeah, I broke many bows, but it never disappointed. I know I broke a bow, and I said, "Well, that's it. Now go to the next one." And
Yeah.
that's kind of out of character for me. I don't have any patience, or very little patience with a lot of things.
Same.
But I found for some reason, I just say, God told me that wasn't going to work. The thing is, it's got to be made right. It's got to perform right. You build up to about 12,000 PSI in its stretching and compression. So when you build that thing and they break, they just explode. I'm telling you. So if you don't build them right and go work with the grain and so forth, then that'll happen to you. And it happens to everybody. But I liked what I was doing and said, "Oh man, that just didn't, that wasn't meant to be."
Right. I love that. So do you make your own arrows as well, or do you purchase those?
Yes, I make them the truly traditional. I use dogwood because it grows in nice shafts that are maybe an inch to half-inch in diameter and the length of an arrow, and scrape them down, put turkey feathers on them. That's what a lot of Indians used over the years. That and river cane, which makes a very good arrow. River cane is stout and light, and put wild turkey feathers on them for fletching, and you can't get any better.
Nice. Yeah, I have a picture of my sisters and I we had some bows and arrows when we were little, and they were handmade. I don't know if someone gave them to us or if we made them and I just forgot, but we loved those things. And then we had some cheap ones that someone got us probably from Walmart somewhere later on that we used, but we were always playing with bows and arrows. And now that I think about what goes into making a really good bow, I have a whole new respect for all of it. So are you actually hunting with these bows or just using them for competition and target practice?
My main love of having the bow is hunting with them. And I've hunted big game, little game, all kind of small game, rabbits and squirrels around here mainly. Got a few deer with my bow. I hunted elk.
Wow.
And shot one, but I was using a regular modern recurve, laminated with wood and backed with modern material.
Interesting.
And I hit an elk with one of them. But I always thought later, if I'd had hunted with my Indian bow that day, which was a really strong, good bow, I might have recovered. I hit the elk and it ran down in this big blowdown area, and I was never able to recover. Anyway, that's a regret I have, but the good Lord took care of it some way, and was used by other animals if it did pass on.
That's right. That's right. There's always, nature has its way, taking care of everything. So when you're talking about if you had had your homemade bow with you, it probably would have taken that elk down. So that's one thing I wasn't even realizing, is that these are so strong. Obviously, it comes from back in the day when they had to have it be so strong to be able to kill, animals that were going to feed their people and their families and their tribe. So it's just kind of an epiphany to me how strong they
in
are.
old days they would have to, right. That had very strong bows. They're shooting at deer, and something you got to get. The strong bow shoots an arrow fast and it has a lot of energy, and when it hits something and penetrates, that's what takes the animal down. So they would have had as strong bows as we make now, and I'm sure, and we're effective with them.
Yeah. And what's the string made out of?
In modern times, we use a Dacron string. It's called. You can get spools of them and just kind of twist up your own string. In old days, and some people still make them out of sinew, strips of sinew that are twisted together, and they are top of the line. They you don't want to get them wet. It's the only thing. But I use the four leg tendons out of a deer. And when those are broken up just right and turned into strips of sinew, then you twist it together and spliced on down till you get the length of the string you want. And that's what mostly everybody, all Indians across America, used, and some still make them. They're not easy to do. So
I bet
some people still put them together.
Wow. Well, this has been interesting learning about the bow making process, and that really, wow, if we ever had to go back to doing things the traditional way because we've run out of resources, I'm going to come to your house. Okay. And going to, go hunting with you and figure this out.
I'll show you. In fact, I just started a couple of Caddo boys here. Their mother, old friend of mine, came by and said they want to start. So I gave them information. Wow. I gave them the booklet I mentioned, and I have a bench. It's called a shaving bench. Some call it a shaving horse that you put your stave in and carve it and so forth. So they hauled it off, and I'm just anxious to see. That was just a few weeks ago. I'm anxious to see how they progressed.
Well, and if they're willing to share any photos with you that I can share as well, like if they don't mind it going on social media, I'd love to be able to share that part of the process in any way on my Facebook page.
Yes, I have a lot of photos. I'll send you.
Okay, perfect. So as I mentioned earlier, and as Phil definitely knows, the dirt in Oklahoma is super red. It's this bright red colored clay that you can destroy basically any white clothing from. And if the clothing gets in the way of the dirt, it's gone. So anyway, you once said to me, Phil, that you came out of that red dirt to go on to be an engineer. And I think that is the coolest thing. So I must have come out of the red dirt to be a podcaster or something. But so this has been extremely interesting. I'm so grateful that the pastor of my former church, Ted Mercer, was kind enough to suggest that we meet up and talk about all of this expertise you hold in that red dirt mechanical engineering noggin of yours. But before we go, just a couple of questions. First off, are there any native causes or businesses that you'd like to promote today?
I've started my own e-commerce site, Chronicles of the American Indian, and I have several. I sell an archery book on there and a book about allotments and other things. But there's I think if people just look around for different businesses now, you can find. As 20 years ago, there were few. 30 years ago, hardly any. But now there are engineering firms, architectural, and all sorts of trade, electrical, plumbing, and so forth. So
absolutely,
I just encourage, if I can find one I have to have them show me that they're qualified. That's what we all want. And
true. You want to give good recommendations. I get it.
Rarely do I
Definitely. And I will be sure to post your Chronicles of the American Indian site on my Facebook page so that everyone can check it out there. Thanks for sharing that. I think it'll be super interesting. And finally, are there any words of wisdom you'd like to share with myself and our listeners?
Gosh, that's a big question. What I tell my children here, and I think it's important, is I say, don't let any sorts of thoughts that you are being oppressed or have racial injustice and so forth. I said, anytime you start thinking like that, you'll find ways to come up with those things. Just say, I'm a person, I'm my own person, happen to be Indian, and I can go out and do anything, and be free thinking and positive. And that's wisdom. I don't know that will mean anything to anybody, but that has been to me. I don't let anybody tell me, oh, you're just Indian and you can't do this, or you've been discriminated against, so forth. I just put that aside. I never think about that. But that's my words of wisdom. Okay.
I like those words of wisdom. In fact, I wish I had that on my wall, so that I and anyone else that views it can keep that as a reminder. There's so much to be grateful for and to look forward to. And now is our time because we have more attention and more focus on us than ever. So what are we going to do with that? Super important that we jump on that wagon and figure out ways to help others, to let our businesses be known, to advocate to help people who may need it. So those are good words of wisdom. Thank you, Phil. And Yakuki, for sharing your impressive knowledge with us today. And by the way, you may have risen out of the red dirt and you may be an impressive mechanical engineer. And basically you can make anything from weapons to, I don't know, spaceships. But just a kind and gentle reminder that we Choctaws will always have the Battle of Caddo Hills. Just saying. So thanks.
Right, well, that's in the past, and good being with you. I enjoyed talking with you and talking about myself. You know what it means. So anyway, thank you for
absolutely having me. No, thank you for your time, because this has been wonderful, and I know that our listeners are really going to enjoy it as much as I have. So take care, Phil, and we'll be looking forward to seeing all those great pictures of the good stuff that you do.
Potential is everywhere in the Choctaw people. It's in our schools and students. It's in our small businesses and entrepreneurs. Potential is in our lifestyle and health. It's in our culture and heritage. Passion and commitment is in our blood. Ingenuity and economy are a tradition. And the Chutta Foundation was founded for this potential. To cultivate minds and hearts, to stimulate ideas and passions, to extend lives and improve health through education, and to preserve and promote the power of our past. The Chutta Foundation, meeting the potential of the Choctaw people.
Thanks for listening to Native Chalk Talk. Be sure to join our community on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Simply search for Native Chalk Talk. That's Native, CHOCTALK. And check us out at nativechalktalk.com. Stay tuned for the next episode. You're going to love it. Yakoki. Thank you, my friends.